Welcome to the infamous edition of the Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched first-person simulation done through creative storytelling of history's most infamous people. Now, let's meet our guest. Welcome to the podcast. Let's start at the absolute beginning, where the public narrative hasn't yet distorted who you were. When and where were you born, and what was your given name?
I was born as Jacob Leon Rubenstein on March 25, 1911, right in the heart of Chicago, Illinois. My parents were Polish Jewish immigrants who came to America looking for a better life. But things got pretty chaotic early on.
What was your hometown and home life like as a child?
Growing up in the Maxwell Street area of Chicago was tough. We had a huge family, 10 surviving kids, and my parents' relationship was volatile, to say the least. There was a lot of domestic tension, and they separated frequently. Eventually, my mother suffered a breakdown and was institutionalized, which left us completely unmoored. Because of all the chaos at home, I ended up spending a significant amount of my childhood bouncing around different foster homes.
Was there a story behind your name or a nickname that stuck with you?
From the time I was a kid, people called me Sparky. My sister Eva always claimed it was because I reminded people of a slow-moving horse named Sparkplug from the old Barney Google comic strip. But if you ask the guys from the neighborhood, they'd tell you it was because of my quick temper. I was always ready to throw down if someone crossed me. I actually hated the name growing up and would fight anyone who used it. Later in life, around 1947, my brothers and I legally changed our last name from Rubenstein to Ruby. We were moving to Dallas to run a nightclub business, and we figured Ruby was shorter, easier to remember, and wouldn't attract the same kind of anti-Semitic prejudice we were worried about.
What were you like as a child, and how many years of schooling did you actually attend?
I was a difficult, rebellious kid, what the courts back then called incorrigible. I didn't care much for authority or sitting in a classroom, so I was constantly skipping school. I officially dropped out for good when I was 16. Instead of books, I learned how to survive on the streets, making money by scalping tickets, selling horse race tip sheets, and taking whatever odd jobs came my way.
What's a decision that changed everything for you, but felt small at the time?
Moving out to Dallas, Texas in 1947 to help my sister manage her nightclub seemed like a straightforward business decision. I wanted a fresh start away from Chicago, where some of my union organizing days had gotten complicated. But stepping into the Dallas nightlife scene changed the entire trajectory of my life. It put me right in the center of a world filled with gamblers, entertainers, and local law enforcement, which eventually led me to that police basement in 1963.
Let's talk about your early run-ins with the law. Before the world knew your name for your most infamous actions, what was your very first arrest or interaction with law enforcement, and what were the consequences?
My very first official interaction with the law happened when I was only 11 years old. I was arrested for truancy because I was completely out of control and skipping school constantly. The state stepped in and sent me to the Chicago Institute for Juvenile Research for behavioral and psychiatric studies. They determined my home life was unstable, which is what landed me in foster care. Later, as an adult in Dallas, I had a string of arrests for minor infractions, carrying a concealed weapon, peace disturbances, or liquor violations at my clubs, but I usually managed to avoid any serious convictions.
At what moment did you realize your name would never be forgotten?
It happened in a split second on November 24, 1963. I was down in the basement of the Dallas Police Department headquarters, surrounded by reporters and police officers. When Lee Harvey Oswald was being escorted out to a transfer vehicle, I stepped out from the crowd, drew my .38 revolver, and pulled the trigger. It happened on live national television, broadcast into millions of American living rooms. The moment the flashbulbs went off and the officers tackled me to the ground, I knew my life was altered forever, and that history would never erase what I just did.
Did fame make you more dangerous, or did it simply expose who you already were?
I wouldn't say fame made me dangerous. It just magnified a lot of my existing flaws. I was always a guy with an intense, volatile temper. People knew me as a swaggering nightclub owner who wasn't afraid to personally bounce unruly customers out of the carousel club. I had a desperate need to be accepted, to be liked by the police, and to be viewed as a big shot. When the national spotlight hit me, it exposed that underlying emotional instability to the whole world.
Who do you believe betrayed you first? A person, society, or your own instincts?
My own emotions and instincts betrayed me first. I allowed myself to get carried away by an overwhelming wave of grief and anger after President Kennedy was assassinated. I wasn't thinking clearly. I acted purely on a frantic impulse. When the trial started, I wanted to stand up and just tell the plain truth about the emotional haze that led me down there. But my legal team insisted on a complex medical defense strategy. I felt trapped by my own actions and the strategy surrounding me.
What was your most unique habit or a random fact about you that would surprise people?
People think of me solely as a violent figure, but I actually loved dogs, especially dachshunds. I treated them like my children. In fact, on the very morning I shot Oswald, I had driven down to a Western Union office to send a money order to one of my employees, and I left my favorite dachshund, Sheba, waiting in the car. I thought I was just running a quick errand and would be right back to take care of her.
What did the public never understand about the pressure you were under at the time?
The public didn't see the psychological breakdown I experienced while sitting in that jail cell. After the verdict, I fell deep into a state of severe paranoia and psychosis. I started hallucinating, believing that my prison guards were piping mustard gas into my cell, and convinced myself that a massive campaign of retaliation was being carried out against people of my heritage because of what I did. I was absolutely terrified and losing my grip on reality.
Did you have any known rivalries that defined your career?
My main rivalries were with the local authorities and competing club owners over the years. I was always fighting with the Internal Revenue Service over thousands of dollars in back taxes, and I frequently bumped heads with the Dallas Liquor Board. I spent a lot of energy trying to stay on the good side of the Dallas police, giving them free drinks and sandwiches at the carousel, just to stay ahead of anyone trying to shut my business down.
What personal battles were you fighting privately while the world was watching?
While the lawyers were busy appealing my death sentence and debating my mental state, my body was silently failing me. I was suffering from severe stomach issues that the jail staff were just treating with simple over-the-counter medication like Pepto-Bismol. In reality, a massive, aggressive cancer was spreading undetected through my liver, lungs, and brain for months while I sat in that cell.
What was your darkest moment, and was there ever a time you wanted to walk away from it all?
The darkest period was definitely the aftermath of the March 1964 verdict. Sitting in that cell, listening to the jury sentence me to the electric chair, and feeling my mind unravel was a total nightmare. There were times I cracked completely, physically harming myself by ramming my head against the plaster walls of my cell out of sheer desperation and mental anguish.
What truth was hardest to escape when you were alone at night?
The hardest truth to face was that my impulsive act didn't make anything better. I had convinced myself initially that I was doing a noble thing, to spare the president's widow the pain of a trial. But the reality of being locked away, facing execution, and realizing the immense damage I had done to my own family and name was something I couldn't escape when the lights went out.
When the law finally closed in, how exactly were you brought to justice? Walk me through the final arrest, the charges that ultimately stuck, and the legal outcome of your trials.
I was arrested immediately at the scene of the shooting, right there in the police basement. I was charged with murder with malice. My defense attorney, Melvin Belli, argued that I was suffering from psychomotor epilepsy and had blacked out during the shooting, but the jury didn't buy it. On March 14, 1964, they found me guilty and sentenced me to death. My legal team immediately fought for a reversal, and in October 1966, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals actually threw out the conviction due to improperly admitted oral statements and the impossibility of a fair trial in Dallas. They granted me a new trial and a change of venue to Wichita Falls, which was set for early 1967.
What's the craziest rumor ever told about you? And what part of your story has been exaggerated the most?
The craziest rumors involve the idea that I was some high-level mafia hitman or part of a massive, intricate conspiracy to silence Oswald. People pointed to my tenuous connections to gamblers and underworld figures from my nightclub days and spun this elaborate web. The truth is much less glamorous. I was a small-time, eccentric club operator who acted entirely on his own volatile emotions.
What is the biggest misconception people have about your life?
The biggest misconception is that I was a hardened professional mobster. While I definitely ran in circles where gamblers and sketchy characters hung out, and I certainly wasn't a saint, I wasn't some cold-blooded contract killer. I was a flawed, impulsive businessman who ran a struggling strip club and desperate for approval.
What would surprise people most about your ordinary human side?
People might be surprised to know how much I tried to cultivate a sophisticated image. I desperately wanted the Carousel Club to be a high-class, successful establishment with a polished clientele. I even joined the Dallas Chamber of Commerce to try and legitimize myself as a proper local businessman, even though my hot temper and financial struggles usually got in the way.
When, where, and how did you pass away?
I passed away on January 3rd, 1967, at Parkland Hospital in Dallas, the exact same hospital where both President Kennedy was pronounced dead and Lee Harvey Oswald died. I had been transferred there from jail just a few weeks prior on December 9th due to severe pneumonia. The doctors quickly realized I was riddled with terminal lung cancer, and I ultimately died from a pulmonary embolism caused by a blood clot.
Was your downfall caused more by your own flaws or by the world changing around you?
It was entirely my own deep flaws. My hair-trigger temper, my emotional instability, and my desperate need to be a part of something historic are what drove me to step out of that crowd with a gun. The world around me was mourning a tragedy, but it was my own choice to let my emotions dictate an act of violence.
What past regrets did you carry with you to the end? If you could erase one decision from your life, would you? Or was it necessary to become who you were?
If I could erase that single decision to walk down into that police basement with a weapon, I would do it in a heartbeat. In my final weeks in the hospital, looking back at how my health had vanished and how my family was left to deal with the fallout, I deeply regretted letting myself get carried away by that emotional frenzy. It ruined my life and left a dark stain on my family's name.
What scared you more? Getting caught? Losing power? Or being forgotten?
Near the end, what scared me most was the terrifying paranoia that my actions had brought a wave of unseen, violent retribution upon innocent people. In my final years, losing control of my mind and being consumed by that deep, psychological terror in a jail cell was far worse than any fear of the law catching up to me.
When you look back now, do you see yourself as the villain, the hero, or something in between?
I don't see myself as a hero, and I certainly didn't want to be a villain. I saw myself as a deeply flawed man who was completely overwhelmed by a historical tragedy and made a catastrophic mistake. I was someone who wanted to be important, but ended up destroying his own life in the process.
Do you have any closing remarks about the interview or the stories you shared that you would like to share with the listeners before signing off?
I just want people to look at my life as a cautionary tale. Don't let anger, a quick temper, or an impulse to take the law into your own hands run your life. It doesn't solve anything, and it only leaves a trail of regret.
And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, do better with the life you have been given and choose to do good in this life. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.